Hello Year 6 and welcome to lesson 2 for this week. It is hopefully Tuesday when you're watching this, and today we are going to be looking at persuasive writing. Today we're going to be using persuasive language in our writing to convince and persuade someone to come around to our way of thinking. Then later in the week we're going to apply this to our writing for our question of the week: should killer whales be kept in captivity? To help convince someone to agree with what you think. Throughout this video you will see this symbol appear. This is the pause video symbol. Whenever you see this symbol, it means that you need to pause the video to carry out an activity that I've given you so that you can do the lesson along with me. For today's lesson, you will need a couple of things. You will need either a pen and paper or a laptop or computer to write and type on. And let's get going. So the first thing we need to think about is, when would we need to use persuasion? When will we need to convince someone to come around to our way of thinking? I've got a few examples of something we could think of right now. We could use persuasion to convince teachers or schools that you guys need less homework. Or you could use it to convince you that you need more homework. To persuade someone that aliens probably exist. Ooh. Maybe to persuade your parents that children should be paid for doing their chores. To persuade someone that dogs are better pets than cats. You could persuade Mr. Rawling that school uniforms are not needed, or that they definitely are needed. It's up to you. If you're really trying to stretch yourself, you could try and convince someone that too much money is actually a bad thing. What does that do to someone if they have too much money? Does it affect them negatively? You could try and convince the government that actually the school day should start later. So instead of coming in at 20 to 9, you should come in at 20 to 10 or 10 o'clock. What will be the benefits of that? And one that I think is going to apply to a lot of you, and I think a lot of you enjoyed persuading someone that actually video games can be educational. I've heard a lot of you telling me about Minecraft, for example, where it's doing a lot of educational games. Could you persuade someone that actually this is an educational thing and something you should be able to spend more time on? They're just some examples that I've come up with so far, but there are so many more other examples. What I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to press the pause button, and I'd like you to come up with some of your own. So hopefully now you've got a few different ideas of your own. You've used some of those for inspiration. If you still haven't got any yet, please don't worry. You can use one of these for the activities that we are going to be doing in a bit. For today's activity, we are going to use for and against arguments to create a balanced argument and persuade someone to come around to your way of thinking on either one of these topics that I've come up with here, or for one of your own. By the end of this lesson, you should have something written for persuasion, or you might have written something and then recorded it, and then you can send to us your persuasive argument. Maybe you can persuade us about something, ready for when we go back to school. It's up to you. Or you could try and persuade your parents of something in this time that you're at home with them. Can you persuade them that actually, because games are educational, you should be allowed more time on them? So for mine, I have chosen to persuade someone that dogs are actually better pets than cats. The first thing I need to do is list all of the reasons both for and against this. Why would people agree with me for, and why would people disagree with me against? So I'm going to have a little think about this. Why would somebody think that dogs are better pets than cats? Why would they think that? Or likewise, why would actually people think, no, Mr. Jobber, cats are actually much better pets than dogs? So what I want you to do now is I want you to pause the video, because the symbol's going to come up in a second, and I want you to think of why dogs might be better than cats and why cats might be better than dogs for pets. What's really important to do, because we're creating a balanced argument, is to make sure we don't have more on one side than the other. It's really important we think about the for and against sides of an argument, because then we're thinking about what the other side that we're trying to persuade is thinking about, and we can convince them why actually what they are thinking is wrong. So pause the video and come up with as many as you can, and you can look at mine when you unpause it. Okay, so as you can see, I've come up with my for and against as to why dogs make better pets than cats. So on my for side, I've got the dogs are more loyal. Cats, I thought, kind of wander off and do their own thing a lot of the time, don't they? But dogs are very loyal to you. Daily walks are very good exercise, so for me having to take a dog out on a walk every day is good because it means I'm getting at least 2 lots of exercise a day normally. Improve mental health. There are studies that show that having a companion, aka a dog, is really good for your mental health, and it makes you feel a lot better and happier because of the love that they show you. And finally, dogs can learn new tricks and understand some words, whereas cats are very limited to what they can understand from what we say, which I believe makes them better pets. But I've also thought about my against side of my argument. As you can see, I've colour coded it here, and that's fine if you want to do that as well. On my against side, I've got the dogs are actually higher maintenance than cats. They require a lot more assistance. Sometimes you let a cat out and it goes away for hours and entertains itself, but if a dog gets bored, you know about it, and they can get quite annoying with things, and they also need you to do a lot for them. They're more expensive to keep. Dogs are bigger normally, they eat more food, their vet bills are more, they just cost a lot more to keep and to have at home than having a cat. You can't really leave a dog at home for a long period of time. It's not really fair on the dog unless there's another dog there to entertain it, or it's quite happy doing that. Normally dogs aren't happy to do that. From my experience, I know if I leave my dog alone for quite a while, he gets quite anxious and nervous and starts to ruin the house a little bit, which obviously we don't want. Whereas cats, you can just let out and they can do their own thing. You can leave them all day and they'll be absolutely fine. So that is something I believe that people who don't agree with me would argue. So I need to find a way to persuade them that although they think that, they're wrong. And finally, dogs molt their fur a lot. Their hair is normally everywhere, isn't it, for a lot of dogs. So it can be quite messy and quite a pain to tidy up from and keep your house quite messy. As you'll notice, I've got 4 on each side, so I've created that balanced argument. There's as much on one side as there is on the other. So my next job is going to be to use this to create a persuasive argument. But before we do anything else, what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video and I want you to come up with 4, at least 4, maybe more, for and against arguments for whichever one you picked earlier. Now before we do anything else, we're going to look at the GPS and language tools that you're going to need for your piece of persuasive writing. So first thing is modal verbs, so verbs of possibility and certainty. In red here I've got just a couple of examples, there are loads more, of modal verbs of possibility, and in black there are some of certainty, when something definitely will happen. Another thing we're going to be using is our conjunctions. So remember, we've got 2 types of conjunctions. We've got our coordinating conjunctions down here, so they join 2 main clauses. So if you think about our fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. And then on the other side, we've got our subordinated conjunctions. These are just a few examples, there are loads of them though. Although, despite, because, and even though. And we're going to be trying to get those into our writing today. And if you're really looking to stretch yourself, you can look at using the active and the passive voice in this. So just a quick reminder, dogs demand attention, dogs is my subject, demanded is my verb, my doing word, and attention is my object, the thing that is being affected by the verb. I have my subject, then my verb, and then my object. So then that's active voice. I like to remember that as the subject is always active, it wants to come first in that sentence. In the passive voice then, in black here, we've got that attention is demanded by dogs. So demanded is still my verb, dogs, is still my subject, and attention is still my object. But this time it's flipped around the other way, and the object comes first, followed by a verb. In this sentence we have a subject, we don't always in the passive voice. This is just a stretch task if you would like to try that today. Now that I have both my for and against arguments and I've figured out what GPS tools I need to help me with my writing, it's time to actually get into it. Now you can do this in 2 ways really. You can either just write sentences or you can write it as a paragraph. If you would like to stretch yourself, I suggest you do it as a paragraph. If doing sentences is the best way for you to practice, then I would suggest doing that. I've got my first sentence up on the board now, where I've looked at using the against argument to start off with. So I've got, you may believe that cats are superior pets when compared to dogs, as they are lower maintenance. However, I must inform you that you are incorrect. I haven't said why they are incorrect, but I've started my writing by acknowledging how the other side feel. I've used my point of them being higher maintenance, so dogs are higher maintenance than cats. And I've also said I understand what you believe. I've used my modal verb of may to indicate there's a possibility they think that. It's not certain, but it is a possibility. Next job then is to argue that why dogs aren't better. I can't just say, well, dogs are better just because they are. Tough luck, they are. I need to say why they are better, which is what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to have a look down my list for my 4, and I'm going to think which one links in well there. As you can see, what I like to do is I like to use a colour coding system to help me with this. This may be something you want to do, it may not be something that's helpful for you. But the reason I do it is that by using both colours, it makes sure that whenever I'm persuading someone for a point, I use both a for and an against argument. So in black pen here, I've talked about why dogs are better. I've used my for argument. So I've said, although a greater amount of attention is demanded by dogs, the loyalty, love and companionship they offer is unrivaled. So again, I've started with a subordinate clause. I said, although a greater amount of attention is demanded by dogs. I've also used a comma there because of a subordinate clause at the beginning of a sentence, you normally need a comma at the end of it. I've also used my passive voice example of attention is demanded by dogs in there. So within that sentence alone, I have a subordinate clause and I have passive voice. And again, I've acknowledged that yes, they do require more attention. That is correct. But I've said the benefit for this is that they offer more love and companionship and loyalty than cats. And again, which is one of my 4 points. You've now got one of my examples. You've seen how I've done it. I'm not going to go over any more because otherwise this could fill up the whole of my whiteboards and could be quite a long video. What I now need you to do is to go off and do the same for your statement, but not just one, for several of them. So if you're looking to persuade someone that aliens probably exist, probably do this 3 or 4 times, put it in a paragraph if you can. If you're looking to persuade Mr. Rawling that the school day should start later, actually we should have ice cream for snack every day, then you need to do the same. When you've done that, we'd really like it if you could send that to us via your parents' email account to the Year 6 email address, and then we could look at your amazing learning. Or if you really want to go above and beyond, you could film yourself speaking it and persuading us using your use of voice and language to do so. Thank you for joining us for today's lesson. We look forward to reading your persuasive arguments for whatever you have chosen, and we also really look forward to hopefully seeing a few videos of you talking and persuading us or your parents of something or other. Hopefully you can convince your parents to do something for you, such as make you breakfast or something like that. Who knows? I'm sure they'll thank me for that one. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow for another lesson where we'll be looking at art. See ya!